Welcome to Profiteers vs. the People, the show where we punch up and dispel myths surrounding modern captains of industry.
For the uninitiated, we take the very rich, particularly those with a media presence like Elon Musk or Bill Gates or the Mowbrays, and put them through our PR torture test and see if they come out on crutches. Our PR torture test acronym.
The C stands for consumer harm, R for rich parents, U for union suppression and employee abuse, T for tax avoidance or tax dependency, the second C for child labor allegations, the H for harassment allegations, the E for egregious behavior after hours, and the S for slap suits and journalist suppression. I'm Money Mike.
And I'm Rad Bill.
And
I have a theory that if humanity is doomed, the death spiral began as soon as we classified water, the stuff we drink to be alive, as a universal solvent. That's just a terrible fucking idea. We need this shit to live. Can you stop using it to help strip copper piping, you animal? Anyway, when I first heard that the American beverage of choice had moved from soft drinks to bottled water, I was sort of stunned. Like in 2017, it had become apparent that the U.S. was backtracking in some pretty key ways. So to hear that while we did all the stuff that we did in 2016, we did it while drinking bottled water, I was, encouraged. But when I mentioned that factoid as a pick-me-up in the company of people who are smarter than I am, their opinions on the metric were markedly different. They were sad. The fact that America drank water made them drink beer. See, it turns out water has been around a while. Fun fact. And the new...
You could say that.
Yeah. And the new innovation...
Can we get a fact check on that?
Yeah, actually, email to profitvspeeps, please. The new innovation with bottled water is the plastic that the water is wrapped in, which has only been around since 1973.
And Rad Bill made me say this word because he hates me. It is polyethylene Dude, there's a PH and a TH right next to each other.
They're neighbors in that word. Can you believe that?
I hate this. Polyethylene terephthalate plastic.
I think you're supposed to make a farting noise in the middle of that.
Yeah,
Terephthalate.
A PH and a TH is, I think, just an onomatopoeia for a fart.
Pretty much. We're going to call it pet plastic, which is what...
For obvious reasons.
Very obvious reasons. It was invented by a DuPont engineer, and because of its ability to carry carbonated stuff, it managed to overtake glass in the carrying liquids around business. Before long, it helped usher in the global sensation of buying extra water a little at a time.
The implications of this sensation have been complicated, to say the least.
Yeah, and remember our rule with the phrase complicated, because a lot of our sources use that word, all the time. When used to describe something bad, this word means that that thing is bad, but someone is becoming rich off of it.
And this is true.
Yes.
I mean, water, as a general rule to everybody in the developed world, is pretty damn accessible. There really isn't a scarcity that a big company could rely on for marketing purposes. But even so, companies like Nestle have made vast fortunes by taking water, wrapping it in plastic, marketing the shit out of it in different ways, and selling it for a gazillion % premium. And there was this joke in that Finding Nemo ripoff from the early 2000s called Shark Tale.
Do you remember that? Pixar would make a movie and then DreamWorks would just make something that was basically identical.
Exactly. But the main character's idea for a get-rich scheme was bottled water. And the gag was they lived in the ocean, so it was a horrible idea. But even at 10 years old, it made me look at bottled water differently. I was that is kind of fucking stupid. There is water everywhere.
It falls from the sky.
Quite literally.
It's been doing it a shitload. It's been doing it so much lately that people are dying.
Yeah. And also, while we're on the subject, why are the fish so hot in that movie? 8-year-old Money Mike was having all sorts of revelations while Will Smith was climbing that mountain of fame that ended with an awkward slap, and all of us collectively saying, yeah, a lot of that guy's movies were pretty shitty. Why was there a Y in The Pursuit of Happiness? But anyway, is plastic bad? Well, yes, but none of us are perfect.
None of us are perfect.
Like, to that end, I would say there's a little plastic in all of us. For me personally, I keep my microplastics in my balls.
Me too. That's where I store mine too. It's out of the way of all the vital stuff. And it'll only become a real problem later. In fact, this is true for all of us. It turns out that we all have a little bit of plastic in our bodies. A lot of it, actually. We would all sound like salt shakers if these plastic particles weren't so small, like micro even. Plastic debris the size of an eraser head or smaller is misleadingly classified as microplastic, as in microscopic plastic. Now, although a great deal of it is plenty visible, most of these particles, a lot of them are kind of big, but most of them are too small to be seen, with the smallest being called nanoplastics, which can get down to a nanometer wide.
For reference, 80,000 nanometers will reach the full diameter of a typical strand of human hair. What this is, in essence, is a bunch of shitty plastic furniture for your blood platelets and helper T cells.
Which is fitting, I feel like. All the stuff in my house is such shit, and I feel like it's only fitting that, like, all the little microns in my body have shitty stuff like that to grapple with in their little houses. Their home can look like my home, full of discarded bits of the stuff that I've purchased to decorate. Fortunately for those little guys, they have a pretty wide selection of shapes and colors because, again, we are full of this plastic stuff. And what does this mean for us? We don't know. And
that's the thing.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure we are not the first people on the internet to inform you, our lovely listeners, about microplastics, because they've kind of been a hot button topic. But the reality is, they could shorten our lifespan or expand it. There doesn't seem to be any data about the long-term implications of this fact. Like, so I say that to say, I feel like when a media medium, that
I like that.
Sounded redundant.
I like it. It does sound redundant, but I say we run with that.
But it's kind of a thing, right? Like, because we are a media medium. And I feel like when a media medium, like, says, there's this thing happening and we don't know what it does, like, there's always a negative connotation to that statement. Like, it always is supposed to elicit some fear. And I think that the unknown is scary, so that's why it elicits that fear. But I feel like we need to very explicitly say, which I guess we already have, yes, this is happening. No, we don't really know what it does.
Or what it means. I mean...
Yeah, and that has a negative connotation to it, but, I mean... Not necessarily, right? I mean, maybe the microplastics will make us live longer. I don't know.
Maybe they'll make us live forever, but as Barbie doll types. That would be a horrifying sci-fi movie. I'd watch that.
Yeah, that sounds like a Black Mirror episode that I would be haunted by.
Like Peter Thiel and that weird guy who's, like, drinking his son's blood or whatever. Or, like, just using his son as a fucking blood bag.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, we should go down
one
that.
Day.
We kind of should, because like I feel like we're gonna do crunches on him, and like the only thing that he's gonna be guilty of is just being a fucking weirdo.
Let's just wait till he dies in some dipshit accident, and then we'll cover him.
Yeah, exactly. Like
the perfect capstone on a ridiculous life.
Yeah, and he gets the E for having dead shark eyes.
So, anyway, back to this whole plastic conundrum we find ourselves in. We don't know what this means, and we've already sort of mentioned this. We don't really even know the capacity of the problem. Experts are still sorting out the best way to identify and categorize all the stuff that's in our bodies. The variety in shape, size, and color means that even if you come up with solid rules for identification, any background on which plastic shit experts can observe these particles is likely to serve as camouflage for at least some of them. When you're looking at the larger ones, the microscopic ones are perfectly out of frame. When you're looking at the microscopic ones, the large ones, there's no way you could possibly comprehend them. And they're all fucking different colors. So just about any time you're looking at any of these, some are going to be blending into whatever background you're looking at them on.
And the fact of the matter is, longitudinal studies involving the human body are tough. Because the whole scientific method is based upon isolating and eliminating variables.
Yes.
That's what it is. We are trying to identify a causal relationship between two things or three things or whatever. And that requires us to eliminate all of the other things that could impact that process as best we can. And the human body, especially over a lot of time, there's just a ton of variables going on. And you can't ethically care for all of them in a study of a reasonable sample size. So, again,
hard to say.
I feel like
I was just thinking about, like, okay, so, like, do you remember the Magic School Bus and how they went into one of the students at one point?
I think about it constantly.
Can you imagine if, like, they did that and, like, they just kept finding little bits of plastic in that kid? Like, ignore that. I wouldn't get into it because I feel like those nanoplastics can break off into even smaller plastics that'll get into you, and then they'll get big when we get big. And
I feel like they'd be like speed bumps for the Magic School Bus. Like, oh god,
our bus is so full of little bits of plastic. We've got to get out of this kid's balls.
Dude, whenever I think his name was Arnold, and I think about this all the time when they fucking went to space and Arnold got pissed off and just took off his helmet.
He just got pissed and killed himself. It was crazy.
Holy shit! And then they screened that and were like, 8-year-olds are gonna fucking love this.
Yeah.
I think about his head turning to like ice.
A block of ice.
Multiple times a week.
Yeah,
multiple times a week.
The girl kept taking pictures, and he was like, that's it, and fucking killed himself.
Dude, like, I saw a license plate the other day that says, if you honk at me, I'll kill myself. And, like, that is the fucking energy that Arnold was bringing to the table, and he was not kidding. But anyway.
You were not kidding either. Yeah, shit was wild. So anyways, this plastics thing. It keeps taking us down rabbit holes. The best we can do for the time being, we being us and the plastic shit experts, is either look at the impact of the visible stuff on the world around us, which seems to be choking on it, or do our best to ignore the facts and hope it's actually no big deal. But, like, deep down, I think we all know that this is not, like, no big deal. We can't even assign numbers to how much plastic is in our environment beyond weighing the stuff we find in beached fish and whales and birds that have seemingly died by being filled with the stuff or putting cameras into some living animal.
Yeah, well, like, dude, I feel like microplastic makes us forget about macroplastics, which are currently choking the world that we live in.
Yeah.
like, I mean, there are trash islands.
Yeah,
I feel like
bigger than normal islands.
Yeah, I feel like we should probably start worrying about the ecological effects of plastic outside our bodies, because if it keeps going the way it's going, we're not going to like live long enough to figure out what the plastics inside our bodies are doing to us, because the sun's going to burn us up. But anyway, I am really not staying on track today.
I know, it's okay. And there's this Russian doll situation too, which is, okay, we've got these macroplastics floating in the water, and then more problematically, they have fucking water in them. And that's going to become a huge thing. My brother was an environmental science guy. He's the brains of the family. But that's a thing he stresses a shitload, is how much fucking water gets taken out of the ecological cycle by fucking plastic bottles and by pieces of plastic that it gets trapped in and then sealed in a fucking landfill in. Like, it's, the shit's not good. Yeah, so it's, to your point, we've got a fucking problem on our hands with the big plastic and the water it's in and the water that's in it. It's not good. So, okay, how are we justifying the choice behind this almost nuclear fallout? Well, Statista has a study and tried to charge me a fortune for the data, and I'm not paying for it. So the gist...
Get fucked, Statista.
Fuck that, man. So I'm going to give you the gist that they gave me when they tried to get me to pay for it. 545 Americans were surveyed on why they bought bottled water, and a bunch said convenience, and I'm okay with this crowd. I'm trying to be healthy, and I can't take my kitchen sink to work with me, so, like, if I really want water that bad, well, I'm an American drinking water, and I think that's... that as an isolated fact is good, objectively.
Yeah. Like, you mentioned we went from drinking soda to drinking water, and I think that you mentioned this too, but, like, that's objectively good, right? Like, soda is bad.
Yeah, and the plastic's poisoning the earth. What we did was we went from drinking soda out of plastic to water out of plastic, which is an objective improvement. And like 46% of all subjects offered this as the reason. It's like, this is how I can drink more water. It's the top choice. 43% said it was a taste thing, which is fine.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, but 25% said they don't trust the water in their house, and a separate 21% cited the chlorine presence in the water in their home as the reason they prefer bottled water. Now, some of you are listening to all those numbers, 46 plus 43 plus 25 plus 21, and going, hey, Rat Bill and Money Mike, those numbers don't add up to 100, do they? And to that, we say, well done. You stand above the rest as having bested your plastic. See, participants were allowed to give multiple answers, unfortunately. So there's pretty good chance a lot of the I don't trust the water people are the same as the bottled water taste better people. In fact, they almost certainly are. What this means is between a quarter and almost half of all participants expressed distrust in their tap water. But why? Barring exceptional circumstances, what did tap water do to get this rep?
Here's a quick breakdown of where your tap water comes from, thanks to the folks at 2 cents. The water coming out of your faucet comes from a variety of sources, wells, rivers, reservoirs, or lakes, usually. It's drawn from these sources, and while being stored, chemicals are added that bond to bacteria and then sink to the bottom of the storage vessel. After that, the water is sent through layers of charcoal, gravel, and sand to filter out remaining particles. Next, small traces of chlorine are added to kill any remaining bacteria, as is fluoride, to protect the teeth of those drinking this stuff. And just because RFK Jr. pisses me off in a really specific way, fluoride is credited with putting dentists out of business at how good it is at preventing tooth decay.
Yeah, legit, 9 out of 10 dentists hate this stuff.
Yeah.
This is
this one thing. Simple trick that dentists hate.
Yep.
But anyway, that water, once all this stuff has been added, is quality tested dozens of times every day to ensure that these processes are achieving the desired results and no one gets sick. Cholera is a bummer, from what I hear.
I've heard it sucks. Yeah, I've heard that it's super lousy. So that's what tap water goes through. And mind you, events in recent memory warrant some concern over the quality of municipal water. Flint, Michigan basically just fucking happened. Also, plenty of older homes have lead pipes, and plenty of water supplies have been contaminated over the years, though in most cases the contamination is deemed to be in quantities that don't affect the water's safety. It's still okay. How does bottled water compare to this? It's got forever chemicals, and admittedly, so does tap water. That's a whole nother fucking episode that I don't really want to do until we'll figure that out. But speaking of, 30% of bottled water just came from a tap somewhere in the US. It's straight out of a fucking sink. It's the same water. The only differentiator is that the bottled stuff gets to build up a concentration of the blood furniture we were talking about earlier, and can sometimes carry heavy metals like antimony. Some bottling companies might run the water through a filter one more time, but it's typically not seen as being necessary. And atop this often redundant step, bottled water is regulated by the FDA, which allows the companies bottling the stuff to run their own tests, which is a giant red flag. Just hold yourselves accountable, gang. You guys got it. Believe it or not, you kind of want bottled water to have come from the tap, though, at least in the US. The stuff from the tap was disinfected, filtered for pathogens, and tested for cryptosporidium and giardia viruses. Bottled water, on its own, doesn't have to be tested for any of these things.
So, where the hell is this tap water bad sentiment coming from? Why is it so compelling that people will spend more on an alternative source of water than they do on gas? I mean, bottled water goes for about $9 a gallon on average. And if you could just find a tap somewhere, you could have got that for someone paying a tenth of a cent.
Yeah.
And how is the sentiment everywhere? Like, there's a fucking subreddit called Hydro Homies. Like, there are people who say if you like a certain brand of water, you're not a real water drinker. Whatever that means. So, like, I don't understand where and how we started forging our personalities from which water tastes slightly better to you.
Yeah, and this water skepticism at this point has made it to the guy who controls our water, basically. And surprise, surprise, this was achieved with marketing.
Chapter 11, the marketing.
So, bottled water marketing has a long history, predating the advent of plastic bottles by like centuries. First, it was holy.
Miracle water.
Then it was magic.
Mineral water.
Then it was grift magic.
Mineral water.
Then it was an alternative to filthy municipal water. This was in like the late 1800s, and the water was full of typhoid and cholera.
Pure water.
But then 100 years ago, they sorted out the issues with municipal water, and this goes back to the chlorine thing. Perrier had ridden the highs and lows of most of these marketing trends, and before the advent of plastic, they were marketing their water as a mixer, with the following slogan: Perrier, c'est fou, which basically means, Perrier, it's crazy! And it took off with that. That campaign, Perrier, it's crazy, handed Perrier a huge portion of the market in France, which is Perrier's motherland and is still where Perrier gets its water today. But after all this crazy success from crazy water, Perrier decided it was time to get water from some other places and sell water in some other places. And in the 70s, the company made its debut in the US, quickly solidifying a prominent position in that market as well. In 1976, the company sold 3 million bottles in the US, which ballooned to 200 million bottles by 1979. And in 1980, the company acquired Poland Springs and Calistoga. You see, the Perrier name was fashionable and highbrow, but in 1977, Pepsi's Aquafina brand burst onto the scene to take advantage of emerging concerns about municipal water with a focus on returning to nature.
When choosing between the tap and a bottle of tap water with a glistening lake, or a glacier, or a spring, or something cold and blue
and sparkly,
the faucet just feels industrial.
It really does. It feels like you're drinking a universal solvent. This, Perrier realized, was key to longevity in the industry, and they began this ramp up with Poland Springs and Calistoga's purchase in 1980, and then they followed it up in 1987 by acquiring Arrowhead Water, which meant they controlled 21% of the U.S. bottled water market. In 1989, the company sold 600 million bottles of water in the U.S., and the following year, a lab in North Carolina found small amounts of benzene in one of Perrier's brands, and though these amounts were negligible, this discovery was enough to stifle the company's hot streak. 2 years later, they were bought by Nestle, which made Nestle the biggest bottled water player in the world. In 1984, playing into continued and unfounded safety concerns over tap water, Pepsi released Aquafina's first purified product, which marked a departure from the spring water moniker and a return to the marketing strategy of the 1800s. This water has no piss or shit in it, so you won't get cholera. It's a good trick.
Fiji water, which I'm sure everyone's heard of, would eventually publish ad copy saying, The label says Fiji because it's not bottled in Cleveland. In response, tests were run, and volatile plastic compounds and arsenic and high levels of bacteria were found in bottled Fiji water, meaning the Cleveland municipal stuff was actually fucking better for you.
Way better.
Yeah, it turns out that, like, municipal water has been engineered to not hurt you.
Yeah, it turns out municipal water friggin' rules. Drink a lot of that shit. It's great.
Exactly.
Yeah. So this kind of marketing, by the way, is everywhere. Some of it.
Oh, God, yeah.
It still is. Like, Royal Springs 2006 ad campaign, I think, was the most blatant, where they just came out and said, tap water is poison. But some others were more, secretive with it. Like Coca-Cola's covert campaign to discourage restaurant patrons from ordering tap water, or their funding of the Competitive Enterprise Institute, which seeks a model for public access to water, which mirrors the current model for public's access to oil.
Speaking of Coca-Cola, they are no heroes at all, but they actually beat Nestle to the U.S. market by 3 years in the purified segment. But this can largely be attributed to differing priorities. Nestle had a lot of other shit going on.
Yeah, and Nestle went after the purified thing as well, but Pure Life, their purified brand, launched in Pakistan. And technically, if we're just talking about bringing something to a market, they beat Coca-Cola by a year. It was just on the other side of the planet.
Dude, what mid-level executive got a massive bonus because he was like, you know what we should do? We should bring water to the desert. And everybody was like, you're a fucking genius.
You know what I feel like this was? I feel like one scientist at Nestle was like, don't tell the upper brass this because they'll destroy the world with it, but there'd be such enormous profit in bringing this to Pakistan. And then that guy went and told the top brass for the promotion. Right?
You're right. It wasn't even the fucking person that came up with it. It was some guy that overheard it that fucking torpedoed his career. but anyway, chapter 12, life-saving water.
Now, according to Nestle's website, Peter Letmath believes passionately that water is a human right. The page where this is stated asserts that he supports the United Nations view on water, and that is hyperlinked to a 404 error page on the UN website. There are a ton of dead links on Nestle's PR page. It's almost like they don't care at all. But the reason Nestle feels the need to devote an entire page to this issue is because Peter Letmath gave an interview in 2005 and said the following.
Water is, of course, the most important raw material we have today in the world. It's a question of whether we should privatize the normal water supply for the population. And there are two different opinions on the matter. The one opinion, which I think is extreme, is represented by the NGOs, who bang on about declaring water a public right. That means, as a human being, you should have a right to water. That's an extreme solution. The other view says that water is a foodstuff, like any other. And like any other foodstuff, it should have a market value. Personally, I believe that it's better to give a foodstuff a value so we're all aware it has its price, and then that one should take specific measures for the part of the population that has no access to this water. And there are many different possibilities here.
So, there's a segment of that quote that's taken out of context. And Nestle points to it being taken out of context. It's the one that ends with, that's an extreme solution, which doesn't look good as an isolated thing. It's a bad take, regardless of what the context is. And it's drowned almost completely in corporate speak. And basically what it means with all of the context is, do you think water is a human right? Well, I think that the people who think water is a human right are fucking freaks.
Yeah, I feel like even as drenched in corporate speak as it is, what he's trying to say comes through. It's like, I think we should privatize water so I can make a bunch of money off of it. And if you think water is a human right, you're weird.
Yeah, you're a crazy
Which is
guy.
A bananas thing to say.
Yeah.
Like a bananas thing to say.
Yeah, by the way, we've covered enough of them at this point. Don't call your kid Peter. It ends badly like every fucking time.
I know a couple cool Peters.
Yeah?
We both know a couple cool Peters.
We do know a couple cool. We know one cool Peter, and I know one cool Peter. Actually, or maybe I know a few.
I said a couple just to make sure that I was being comprehensive, but I was only thinking about one Peter.
Well, yep, and I don't know that he listens to this show, but if he does, you're all right.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
But all right.
Hell yeah.
Let's give Peter Letmath some rope here. Play along with Nestle's PR campaigns and efforts following this interview and say that, what Peter meant was what he has said since then to bridge this quote and to his current actions and the narratives he's spent the following years trying to spin. Water is a right. Some of it. Here's what we get, basically. Water is a right. Some of it. Each person in the world has a human right to the 5 liters of water a day required for hydration and the 25 liters per day required for sanitation. Everyone deserves to use water as a life force. If we say water is a right and give everyone as much water as they want, they'll overuse it. This is the most differential way we can read into all of the press releases and all of the PR that started with that statement and brought us to today, right now.
I'll give him an A for effort.
Right? Yeah.
It's a more well thought out, nuanced stance, but it's still dumb.
Yeah. Yep.
And Peter's hands were kind of tied here, not only because he played a leading role in the company when Nestle began its foray into bottled water, but also because nothing Nestle has ever done would suggest they think that water is a human right. And what Peter can't afford in this moment is to explicitly take the water is a right stance and then get drilled by a bunch of whatabouts based on the company's actions that make them look like a bunch of fucking hypocrites.
Yeah, the company literally lobbied for access to water, quote unquote, to be downgraded from a right to a need at the World Water Forum just 5 years before this interview. Like, him being like, yeah, I think it's a right, would have been like PR suicide. His hands were genuinely tied.
And also, how can I spin water not being a right on everybody else? Like, yeah, if water's not a right, they'll use too much and then we'll run out of water or something.
Because of all the regular people out there just overusing the water. And by the way, 2005, 2 things about this. 2005 was a time where corporate accountability was different. Like, if you fouled up as a CEO on the mic, you're done in 2005. Yeah. The other thing at play here is that Peter Letmath is good at this. I mean, genuinely, like, he is good at burying a scandal. I think that's one of the reasons he stood at the helm of Nestle for as long as he did. He just knew his way around a scandal, and Nestle is a scandal machine. By the way, worth mentioning, they lobbied for this whole access to water thing to be downgraded from a right. And in doing that, they were successful, and there was no threshold or specification on how much water isn't a right. They just didn't want any water to be considered a right. And also, water is already tariffed in many cases, meaning you already pay for the water you use. This stuff already costs money. It's just it doesn't cost very much money. Households in the U.S., a nation known for its great overindulgence, right now pay for water, even though it's barely anything they pay for it. And in doing that, and in wasting water, we waste the shit out of water. We use just 8% of the total daily consumption on, like, consumer needs. That's it. The 2 big users of the other 92% of the water used in that equation are thermoelectric users, like power plants and the like, who put a ton of that water right back, and then farming users who don't put the water back. And this falls right back onto Nestle. Guess what Nestle is super fucking tied into is agriculture. Now, is Peter advocating for a more stringent price on the water his former employer is using? We'd have to ask him, but I'm willing to bet he would be opposed to such a proposition.
He's pulling a Sam Altman.
Yeah.
Where he begs for regulation and then turns around and vehemently opposes whatever comes about. It's well, not like that.
Yeah. Further, Nestle's entire water acquisition strategy seems to be this: get water for as cheap as possible, whatever the cost.
This explains the Pakistan of it all.
That's right. They aren't going where all the water is. They're going where all the oversight isn't. And they now control 36% of Pakistan's bottled water industry. You see, while Big Soda got established selling tap water in the US for absurd markup, Nestle got to work negotiating with the Pakistani government to get water to bottle for basically nothing.
So how they do this? Well, a growing economy like Pakistan's wants to attract big players and wants to come off as business friendly. So when a business comes knocking and offers to build 2 large water processing plants, they get to get a lot in return.
Yep. In exchange for building these 2 plants, Nestle sought and received ownership of the land underneath those plants and the water underneath that land, which belongs to a major well, which is part of the Indus Basin, one of the most important aquifers in all of Pakistan. Because of how the agreement is written and because of the nature of mineral right laws in Pakistan, which haven't changed much since British rule, Nestle owns this water already. They own it now. They own the water in this well, and they are free to suck that well dry so long as they pay the vanishingly modest tax obligation on this owned water each year.
What this comes out to is essentially 1/6,250th of a cent per liter.
Yeah.
And Nestle doesn't even have to pay for the extraction. The company can then turn around and charge locals in the village of Sheikhupura 32 American cents per bottle.
Yep. Now, if you had a deal like this, surely you would take all of the water allotted to this badly water-deprived area for yourself as quickly as possible and leave the locals, children and elderly, with nothing but toxic sludge to drink. Or maybe you wouldn't, but this is what Nestle did to an area where it was still advertising formula, mind you, with the old sneak in and market the stuff to new mothers trick, like in the 2010s. And in 2013, the town stormed the plant, demanding access to, obviously, unsurprisingly, non-poisonous sludge water. That tracks.
Yeah, God, why is it every time I hear about another country getting screwed over and just getting violent about it, I feel sad and jealous? But the accompanying press coverage, which is Nestle's one true weakness, was enough to persuade the company to install a water filtration system for the community. But Nestle's thirst remained unquenched and the consumption continued.
Yep. Before long, the case became a case and made its way into the Pakistani courts, where more revelations were revealed. Between 2013 and 2017, you see, years in which this court case was actively taking place, they take forever all over the place. Nestle had pulled 4.43 billion liters of water out of the well in Sheikhupura, the well in Port Qasim, and the well in Islamabad. And through this extraction, we're able to sell a total of 2.5 billion liters of bottled water, netting Nestle billions and allowing distributors and retailers to profit an astounding 276%.
Now, we just threw a bunch of really big numbers at you really fast.
Yes, we did.
So you might have missed this. 4.43 billion liters of water were extracted and 2.5 billion liters were sold. So what happened to the other roughly 2 billion liters of water?
Yeah, and that Nestle responded when the question was posed. Well, 664 million liters or so were lost to osmosis, which is a filtration process.
Ah. And what about the other 1.265 billion liters of drinkable water? The courts were asking this question.
And here's the problem with freely giving such a vital resource to a company who assigns value to it by appealing to the open market. They don't know. It's fucking gone.
Jesus.
No way to figure out where it's going, so there is no way to stop this disparity either. And we know it isn't going back into the aquifer because the aquifer keeps shrinking. By the way, this destroying the water thing that the company is doing here goes both ways. Allegedly, when the Chief Justice of the Pakistani Supreme Court visited the plant in Karachi, a sample of the water the company managed to keep track of for bottling was found to be unsafe for human consumption. And that's the stuff going to the shelves. The company was also found to be bottling this water in plastic that was below the country's safety standards. So they're taking this water, poisoning it, allegedly, and then putting it in plastic bottles that poison it even further. The case in Pakistan ended with a ruling in 2019 demanding the assembly of an independent commission to monitor water withdrawals. However, that ruling came and went, and to this day, no such commission exists. Some allege that the company has played a role in this sustained silence, but whatever has happened, it happened behind closed doors. In June of this year, 2025, a separate initiative was set up by the Punjab State Farmers and Farm Workers Commission to study and conserve water resources, but I think we can all take a guess at where their priorities will rest. In agriculture.
In the end, it seems Nestle gets all the drinking water, and as thanks, everyone pays a vast premium for poisoned, shitty product.
Yeah.
Which was, for millennia, clean drinking water on which they depended. Allegedly.
Allegedly.
Which brings us to chapter 13. Like termites.
Now, Nestle's U.S.-based bottled water subsidiaries were spun off not too long ago and sold to private equity, who placed them under the Blue Triton umbrella. However, much of what was brought to form this new spinoff was stolen, many would argue. Nestle's approach to growing its U.S. presence, past simple acquisition, you see, resembles their initial choice to get started in Pakistan. Look for social vulnerabilities and extract water, or create social vulnerabilities and extract water. Maine is a state that many forget is part of the U.S., and spoiler alert, it's fairly poor. Fryeburg, Maine is the source of any water with the label Poland Springs. Now, Nestle's funneling of water from the region was introduced and has been continually reinforced at the legislative and communal level with an aggressive but cost-effective PR campaign. It began in 1992 when Nestle acquired Poland Springs and for a while worked almost without incident.
The company is a good corporate citizen. It's a job creator. The company buys sporting equipment for local high schools like skis, because this is Maine where it's cold all the time. The company sponsors fairs and donates to local Boy Scout troops. And it's the same thing as Pakistan.
Yep.
They find a vulnerable, usually right-wing community. Maine votes blue. Fryeburg is more Republican.
It's on the right
and
side.
especially more Republican compared to the rest of the Northeast.
Yes, yeah, you're right about that.
They find politicians who can run on job creation, and they use that to extract whatever they can.
Yeah. They use that to get a hold of those resources. At the legislative level, campaigning ramped up in 2001 right as locals began to fight back. Between that year and 2012, lobbyists for the company donated something to the tune of $630,000 to politicians in the state. Small numbers, the values of a politician are so cheap. And since then, Nestle alums have become completely embedded in state politics. A Nestle lobbyist found their way onto the Maine Public Utilities Commission in time to vote in 2013 on how Freiburg's water would be allotted. Patricia Aho was a Nestle lobbyist before running the state's Department of Environmental Protection, and Governor Paul LePage appointed a Nestle alum to the State Environmental Protection Board in 2018. Unsurprisingly, ballot initiatives have come and failed. Court cases have risen and resolved in Nestle's favor, and just before the pandemic, Nestle was given the thumbs up by the state Supreme Court to extract between 75 and 220 million gallons of water from Freiburg each year until around 2065.
Jesus.
This local tug of war has played out all over the U.S., as folks on the national level either did nothing or helped Nestle. This is unsurprising because our federal government is full of Nestle alums. Ann Veneman, who was the agricultural secretary for George W., had served on Nestle's board, and the FDA has seemingly buckled after an investigative lead at the agency was hired to work for the company under investigation, which, for clarity's sake, was Nestle. Ultimately, though, even despite the lead investigator being hired away, the same allegations against the company resurfaced. Nestle allegedly was pulling groundwater from Strawberry Creek, a well in California, and selling it as spring water, which they were also aggressively pulling from Strawberry Creek, but which they can sell for more than just the groundwater. False advertising type thing. In 2017, the Trump administration issued a pretty convenient executive order, though, effectively demanding that federal agencies clear a path for the private property rights of water users on public lands.
Imagine that.
I know. And though Nestle's continued use of this well carried the caveat that studies be conducted on the effects of their extraction, Nestle secured its position as the one conducting the studies and will not be releasing the results publicly, which means more than likely nothing is going to change, and we're just going to have to continue fighting. The origin of their activity in Strawberry Creek stank of corruption, so much so that the Forest Service Special Uses leader, Gary Ernie, was questioned by the FBI on the matter. The 1984 permit, you see, allowed Nestle to pull however much water they pleased from the ground for a charge of $500 per year. Ernie explained that he suspected there was corruption, but that none of that potential corruption was in writing, so there's no way to say for sure. With that in mind, that being said, Nestle is no stranger to getting busted being corrupt as hell. Local officials in Oregon and Pennsylvania and the mayor of a small town in Washington state wound up resigning in separate incidents when it was revealed that they'd collaborated in secret with Nestle to secure water deals favorable to the company.
Jesus Christ.
Every time there's some legislative weakness, there is Nestle trying to steal water.
Yeah. Do you think they gave them money in briefcases?
Right? They almost had to. Or maybe it was something stupid, like every time a politician gets busted taking a bribe, it's like, yeah, he gave away the state's water because they gave him an $8,000 Sorrento.
Yeah, I was gonna say
some bullshit.
They gave him a lease on a company car with a pleather interior. In all of these cases, Nestle's plans ultimately fall apart, not as the result of hardened judicial policy, not as the result of federal or state safeguards or regulations or investigations or any acronym agency doing their job. It's all just fucking bad publicity.
That's it. It's the threat of the angry mob.
Yeah. I mean, maybe they learned from Pakistan when there was
an angry mob.
Yeah, dude, we need more angry mobs.
I hate agreeing with you on that, allegedly. I mean, that's not a stance of the podcast. Oh.
We do not support violence. Chapter 13. What is Nestle really after?
So as we've carried on researching for this series, one thing has become abundantly clear. Nestle isn't alone in this shit. Every company on the face of the earth is seeking to be a middleman one way or another, whether that be the middleman between a community and their valuable resources, consumers and the materials that form the products they buy, or the more typical, I don't need to explain myself past that because those were the really hard scenarios for that kind of reach I just did. What Nestle and soda companies and the food companies are trying to insert themselves into are existing contracts between humanity and the nature it inhabits. Money doesn't grow on trees, but food does. Fruits and vegetables grow on trees and out of the dirt, and these things do that because for millions of years, creatures like us would eat those yummy things and crap out the seeds in a place where they'll be able to plant roots and come in contact with some of that water that falls from the sky.
You pick, you eat, and you drop the seeds with a bunch of other stuff you aren't using, and a new plant grows out of that, which you can pick something off of later. This is the contract that you're agreeing to when you take a bite out of an apple.
That's it. And any business that has sought to insert itself into this contract has done so via atrocities, and rest assured, what Nestle is trying to do with the water that comes out of the sky and sits in the ground is insert itself into that cycle and put a paywall between that water and you. Some of this work is done for them by other companies. Rainwater is apparently not safe to drink any longer, which is great for the company that sells the stuff coming out of the ground. As the air poisons the falling stuff, companies like Nestle will acknowledge the fragility of the ecosystem, all while they look for weaknesses to exploit. They'll use soft, compromising language and participate in discourse on whether or not free water is the most sustainable solution.
But keep in mind, for most of the folks listening right now, water is not currently free. You might have a water bill, and you most certainly pay taxes that tend to the system that brings water to your mouth and helps get it back out of your residence when you're done with it, which, I mean, is okay, right? Like, you're paying for water coming to you. And for most people, it's a reasonable, payable fee. But when Nestle gets involved, it becomes absurd.
Yeah.
And profit-driven, not convenience-driven.
What they're doing and the numbers they're coming up with have no basis in reality at all.
None.
In most cases, mind you, you already pay more for water than Nestle does. In Flint, Michigan, the revelation that Nestle was paying basically nothing for the water it was bottling and shipping away, while locals paid normal amounts for poison, sparked outrage.
Rightfully so.
It makes sense. Nestle, in response, began donating bottled water to the town. But think about that. The clean water in this case is Nestle's to donate. And the state, before that, basically just gave it to them. The rest is poison. The town of Flint, Michigan is depending on the goodwill of a company that has only press coverage to fear. And thank God the good people at Nestle had the hearts to give us some of what they own.
Yeah, some of their product.
Yeah.
Right? Like they didn't donate money to fix Flint, Michigan. They were like, hey, take some of our stuff that we got for free.
Take some of our property.
Yeah, that we took from you.
Yeah.
And put in a poisonous bottle for some reason.
Yeah. What Nestle's fighting for when they say water should carry a price, so we're more responsible with it, is the ability to sell it to you at their discretion, to be its steward and to waste it if they see fit. And what they're angling to do when they position themselves as a pillar of this conversation on what to do to save the water is soften the idea of them getting to this point of ownership, and they're pushing to get there without you noticing at all. Ultimately, when all the municipal water is finally poisoned by some dipshit, short-sighted company like Exxon or by some harebrained politician or Elon Musk somehow, it will occur to you that you now have to appeal to Nestle for goodwill and for a little of their vast reserves of water that you never even saw them take from you.
maybe if you're lucky, Nestle will be nice to you.
That's our series on Nestle. Thank you so much for listening. Did we earn it? Did we do just okay? If you feel like we did, let us know in the comments by commenting with something like, that right there was an episode of a podcast. 7.5 out of 10. Feel like subscribing? Well, that'd be awful nice of you. It apparently helps us in ways our feeble podcaster brains can't comprehend. So please, are you listening on YouTube? How's our thumbnail? Isn't it great? RL Black drew it up for us, and we feel great about it. Definitely subscribe on there because we somehow only have 61 subscribers on YouTube. We must be doing something very wrong.
Tune in for our next one. We'll take some billionaires' lunch money, and it'll be lighter and funny, and we'll all have a big laugh. We love you, and goodbye.